بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. I ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us the sincere intention. I praise Allah and I thank Allah for the ni'mah, for the endowment of al-Islam, for the endowment of being on the path of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, for the endowment of the valid creed, al-aqidatu sahiha, and the sound methodology of the great scholars of Islam who have conveyed our religion with an unbroken chain of narration back to the master of messengers, Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum to everyone, and for those who preceded me in giving the salam, I say wa alaikum assalam. Today, I wanted to pause and our reading of the section on doctrine from Imam al-Haddad, and I wanted to give some advices. So, as I mentioned to you, for those who have been following, it is important that you become good students of knowledge. Or if you don't want to use the students, seekers. You want to be good seekers. And one of the ways is that you follow the teacher wherever he may take you. It's extremely important. When you come to a lesson, a session of learning, you come to get whatever benefit the teacher has to offer. I was explaining to someone the other day, and some books that we learn from our teachers, sometimes for one book to finish, a book that we could have read maybe in 2 or 3 hours, we could have finished the book reading. The sheikh would take 5 years to cover that book. 5 years. So one would ask, why did it take 5 years? The book could be read 2 hours, tops 3 hours. With a good reader, we could finish the book. And when we review, we finish the book in 2-3 hours straight. We finished the book. But what the sheikh would do is that he was explaining that book as a part of our life. So as we were learning, and this is in more than one book, but I'm saying one book, particular in Al-Fiqh, it took us 5 years to finish it. But what he would do is he would read lines, and whatever was happening that he needed to address, he would address during the session of the class. So he would talk about many issues that were not directly related to the book, but could be extracted from what we were learning in the book and applying it in our daily activity and dealings. So by that way, when we finished the book, several things occurred. Number one, we actually understood that book very well because we understood the purpose of us learning the book. So we knew what was behind it. Why is this so important? Because of the extra discussions of the sheikh. Secondly, we were able to explain the book in multiple ways because we understood its context and we understood where it could be applied and where it cannot be applied. And thirdly, that uh, that book became a part of us because we was with the book for a long time. We spent a long time in that book, reviewing, going over. It was something that was beneficial. So with that said, I need you to all take a sticky pad or a bookmark and remember where we left off in the book of assistance in the section of doctrine, which is chapter 11. After talking about Sayyidina Imam Ahmed bin Isa al-Muhajir. After that discussion, that's where we pause, and inshallah, we'll come back there in our next time we go back into the book of assistance. But for now, I want to cover something important because last night we had a beautiful, in my opinion, session with the Black Imams Roundtable. And it was a very intense conversation, a needed conversation, but a conversation that I think we don't spend enough time on. And some of us, we like to rush. I repeat, I don't do microwave Islamic studies. If you want to study with me, it's going to be a long time. If you thinking you're going to come with me and I'm going to get everything and I'm going to go, wrong person. You need to know a different person to listen to. Because I ensure that whatever we talk about, we get our shovels and we dig deep. I am not a superficial student of knowledge, nor am I a superficial teacher. If you want to learn with me, you're going to learn. So that's going to take time. That's going to take patience. You're going to have to take notes. You're going to have to review. You're going to have to repeat. But when we finish, you will know what you're talking about. And whatever you study, you will understand well. You won't be a mixture of everything and understand nothing. That won't be the case. So I definitely require patience to study with me. You're going to listen to me, you got to be patient. I'm not going to be in a box that fits the way you need to study. The student needs to develop into following the pattern of their teacher. Because when you study, you shouldn't only study with one teacher when you learn. You're going to go, you're going to exhaust one teacher, you're going to go to another teacher, you're going to exhaust what that teacher has. This is the pattern of the seeker of truth. But you're going to have to be patient. I can't emphasize that enough. And my approach in teaching the religion and talking about the subjects I'm talking about and choosing the things to talk about is because I'm going on a 40-year history of an African American, a Black American in Islam, and all of its different aspects that we experience in America. And I'm trying to give you a route to save you from going through what many of us went through. So in order to do that, I have to give you a lot of information and from a lot of different angles because you're confronted with all these things on a daily basis. So it's not sufficient that like you're protected, like I can do my child, where I can protect him from a bunch of ideas and just teach him the knowledge. And then, inshallah, you'll be all right. We're adults. We're in the world. We're mixing people. We're on social media. So we're confronted with a lot of things. So I have to put everything in context. So let me get to my advice about the Islamic sciences, which we were talking about during the weekday. Every Islamic science has its scholars related to that science, has its subject matter, and has its relied upon books. I need you to write that down. Every science of Islam that you learn has its scholars. So they are the scholars of that field. It has its information, the subject matter that's related to that specific science. And it has its relied upon books in that field. So just for a quick review, for those who have been attending, and you can put it in, I'm gonna keep talking, but I want you to put it in. I named 8 sciences that one needs to learn. I mentioned 3 of them were primary sciences, and the other 5 were sciences that support those primary sciences. Inshallah, I'll give you to go for it, start putting those sciences. Those who attended, those who didn't attend it, you won't know. So give me the 8 sciences that I mentioned to you. And I'll just read them in the chat box as we go along. So those 8 sciences, and there are more, but I just gave you 8 that we want to focus in on. Those 8 sciences, every one of them have scholars. And those scholars, they are specialists in that field, right? So number one, you want to have to know who are the people of the field. If you're talking about a science, you can't use people who are not a specialist or a masters in that field. It doesn't work. To give you an example of that, if I'm talking about heart surgery or heart specialist, you're not going to tell me about dentists when we're talking about heart surgery. You're not going to talk about a dentist. This famous dentist, you're going to tell me and him in relation to heart surgery. Or if I'm talking about auto mechanics, specializing in the field of fixing cars, you're not going to tell me about a carpenter, right? This is very important. If for a woman, we're talking about a woman who specializes in treating the female issues, medical issues, you're not going to ask me about a veterinarian. You're not going to talk about it. It don't fit. Each science has its specialization. MashaAllah, that's excellent. So the Quran, the Hadith, Fiqh, Tawheed, Usul Fiqh, Sirah, Tasawwuf, Arabic grammar. MashaAllah, very nice, very nice. MashaAllah. Good, alhamdulillah. So these sciences, each of them have specialists. Okay, so let's take those sciences, right? Let's take the science of Aqidah. The science of Aqidah, it has its scholars. So we talked about in terms of the madhabs in Aqidah, Al-Ash'ari and Maturidi. That's one thing. As Imam al-Haddad mentioned in his book of assistance, Imam al-Haddad, he said the truth and the tenets of faith in Aqidah is with the people of the Ash'ari. And this was the Aqidah of Imam Haddad, his predecessors among his family of Al-Alawi, of the companions, of the followers of the companions, and the followers of the followers. So Imam al-Maturidi and Imam al-Ash'ari are among the scholars. But there are other main scholars who specialize in the field of Aqidah. Like Imam al-Laqani, we mentioned Imam al-Tahawi was good in this field of Aqidah. Imam al-Laqani and others, Fakhruddin al-Razi, Imam al-Baqilani, Ibn Furak, right? All of these great scholars, some of you most probably don't know those names, but these are specialists in the field of Aqidah. They wrote and they taught in the field of Aqidah. If we take al-fiqh, there are scholars in all of the madhahib, all of the schools that are specialists in the field of fiqh. That's what they studied, that's what they're known for, that's what they wrote in, that's what they researched in. Likewise, in tasawwuf, hadith, Quran, Arabic, and Sirah. Why is that important? Because when you want to study a science, you need to study the science with its people. As we talked with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, verily knowledge is by learning. إِنَّمَا عِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ. Knowledge is by learning, and that learning is through a teacher. And that teacher is in the field that they study. This idea that we don't need specialization is a false construct. You need people who understand the field that they're talking about. And whenever you study in a classical, traditional way, whenever you study an area, you're going to learn those things that are necessary to know about that field, right? So this is extremely important. What happens to us in the West when we study, most of us? What is the pattern? The pattern is the average person. And there are exceptions. So if you're an exception, say, Alhamdulillah, I'm an exception to the rule. But we're talking about the average Muslim. The average person goes to their masjid or meets some friends or family. They want to become Muslim. They utter the Shahada. Sometimes that's not done properly, but that's a whole nother discussion. And someone says, here's a book on Islam, and go read this book, and I'm going to come back, and maybe I'll teach you the prayer. Or maybe sometimes the person don't have all that, and they're forced to go do that themselves. So then they go learn, they start reading books. They have no background of what they're studying. They don't know any format to study. They're just going on what they may understand from their previous knowledge or references to things, and they start from there. And what happens, depending how long that situation lasts, will be how long they are confused about matters. There's no structure whatsoever. And this is why you'll find a person who, after 10 years, sometimes 20 years, that basic things about the religion that you would think they should know, they don't know. They know a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that, and it's not in no organized, structured manner. So it leads to misunderstanding. And that's why when I mentioned last night, when I talked about Wahhabi by default, I wasn't, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. That's just reality. Because the default position is what is exposed to you without no one teaching you. And then if you do that for a certain amount of time, and you're in an environment that people are all like that, you'll begin to think that that is actually knowledge. And that is an actual path of traveling, when it's not. Never been accepted. So I want to give you an advice. Whenever you want to study a science, first of all, I gave you the sciences, those 8 sciences, and there are more, but I just gave you 8. Because those 8 sciences are basically all we need to start with in the beginning. In the beginning, there are more that need to be added. Every one of those sciences, whenever you go to learn them, make it a rule that I learn from a teacher. Let's make a covenant with us. No more do-it-yourself Islam. I need to find someone who learned these things from a teacher, who learned from a teacher, who learned from a teacher. And I need to the best of my ability, make an effort to sit in the company of those teachers. Extremely important. Because in order to fix this issue of people learning improperly, people being all over the place, we have to set up a system. And that system is already available within the structure of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. It's already in that structure. And I want to share something with you. And I'm pointing it out so that you can follow, for those who were listening yesterday. And one of our Imams, may Allah preserve all of them, he was talking about scholars in America among our people. And I want to clarify something. I'm on black time. If you ain't got that by now and you haven't been listening to me, I'm on black time. I love my people. Since I was a little boy, I was in the black struggle. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to change reality because I love black people, right? Reality is still reality. And I have a concept, and I want you all to write this down. Raise the bar for us. Don't lower the bar so we can look big. Raise the bar. Don't lower it. Lower it to our standard. No, let's elevate our standard to the bar. And it's very important. You got to understand, in Islam, this is a global thing. We're no longer just going to be stuck in our little local box, and that's our deen. We can't afford to be misguided. Our children are going to face a global economy, global information. There is Islam on the global international level, and they can't come with a faulty Islam. They have to learn. If we're ever going to be considered as a people worthy of respect, someone that the Islamic world is going to listen to, there are certain things that we have to fix. Among them is our level and degree of our understanding of Islam, right? The do-it-yourself Islam won't work in a global world. It won't. All these, fancy things that may sound nice to us, when we get on the global world in the international stage, and we're on the international stage, if we're going to be respected, we got to learn. And we got to put in systems like everyone around the world did to learn. So, for instance, the idea of us being scholars, we need to define terms, because sometimes when we're talking, we're saying the same word, but we mean different things. One of the most important things when you study Islam is to understand terminology. If we're not talking about the same thing, we're going to be talking and be confused and debating about something that we shouldn't be debating about. Why? Because we don't understand terminology. So whenever you study Islamic sciences, among the first things you learn about the science is the terminology that relates to that science, so that you don't use terms out of context. It's extremely important to understand. I'm talking about hadith. So I need to know hadith terminology, because when I'm reading books of hadith, there's going to be certain terminology that only relates to the science of hadith. It has a technical meaning in that field. If I'm talking about Aqidah, there's certain terminology in the field of Aqidah. If I'm talking about al-fiqh, there is certain terminology in the field of fiqh. If I'm talking about at-tasawwuf, there's terminology in the field of tasawwuf. If I'm talking about Arabic language, grammar, there's terminology for grammar. If I'm talking about the Quran, there's specific terminology for the Quran. If I'm talking about usul al-fiqh, there's specific terminology for usul al-fiqh. If you don't understand that terminology, when you talk about the science, you're going to be talking about it in an improper manner. It's extremely important. And I'm trying to help us. I told you the story. Sheikh Samir said to me one day, Hafizahullah, he said, why do you teach your people these advanced sciences? And why don't you start them from the beginning like you're supposed to start? I said, I would love to do that, Sheikh. The problem is my people won't sit for that. They already have been told by the medium of Wahhabism that they're scholars. So the structure that they have, even though it's not reality, in their mind, they have a scholar's mind, though they're not scholars. Did you understand what I said when I said this to him? I said the way we learn by default, which is that default Wahhabism, it tells us you can read the Quran and Sunnah on your own and you don't need no scholar. So what does that mean in reality? If you read the Quran and Sunnah on your own, that means you're a scholar. That means you're deducing your own legal rulings from the primary sources, which entails that you have to be a scholar to do that. Since you won't listen to a scholar, that must mean you are a scholar, right? That's the default assumption. And even if you say, I'm not a scholar, but you're doing scholarly work, because if you're reading the Quran and the Hadith books and you're extracting rulings on your own without knowledge of the fields that you're trying to practice, then that's a scholar's job. And that's a top level scholar, which we call a Mujtahid. Let me share these terms with you real quick. And I gave them to you and I put it up again. I'm going to put it on the Facebook. A Mujtahid. A Mujtahid scholar, you can write that, is a scholar that is able to deduce legal rulings from the primary sources of Islamic law, meaning the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the consensus, and deductive analogy, al-qiyas. These are the primary sources agreed upon by Ahl Sunnah, al-Quran, al-Sunnah, al-Ijma', and al-qiyas. If you're reading the Quran and you're reading the Hadith and you're making rulings, I read in the Hadith this, and this Hadith was Sahih according to Al-Albani for those who are a little bit advanced in their stuff, that's the job of a Mujtahid. That's the job of a Mujtahid you're doing. So what you're saying is, I'm not following nobody, I'm deducing this on my own. That means you're a Mujtahid. And then the question that follows, do you meet the conditions of a Mujtahid? The answer is absolutely not. So why are you doing the job without the qualifications? We call that in our language a quack, someone who practices medicine and doesn't have a license and doesn't know medicine. That's a quack. That's not a doctor. So we don't call him a doctor. It's a quack. And if you go to them, they're going to be in prison and prosecuted for falsifying their abilities as a doctor. And that's the same thing was happening with most of us. Instead of having 4 imams of fiqh, we got 500,000. Every person who becomes a Muslim is all of a sudden reading Al-Albani's Prophet's Prayer described and making legal rulings. This doesn't work. And that's why I'm saying advice is to the Islamic sciences. So, and that is extremely important. So yesterday, I'm going back to that, when we were talking about scholars, and I asked a simple question, if y'all remember this. A simple question, wasn't difficult. I said, they were talking about scholars. I said, you have 2 types of people. You have a scholar and you have a common person, right? You have a scholar and a common person. In Arabic, we say al-alim wal-ami. You have a scholar and a common person, a lay person. The scholar is of various levels. Not every scholar is the top level scholar. Likewise, like not every doctor is the top level in a certain medical field. You have different doctors, even till you get down to a primary physician. The primary physician is not like a specialist that works in a specialized field in medicine. He has a general knowledge of medicine, but he's not like a specialist. That's why you go to your primary doctor. If things are a little bit severe, he sends you to what? A specialist. So likewise, you have learned people who are scholars, but they're not specialists in fields. They may know a general overview, But if it comes to a specialized thing in a field, you need to go to the specialist of that field to get the answer. That's the same in Islam. So if I'm talking to my sheikh, who's a common person, he's not a hadith scholar. If I'm going to ask detailed questions about hadith knowledge, I'm not going to ask him. I'm going to ask a hafiz in hadith, or I'm going to refer to someone who's a specialist in hadith. Likewise in any other science. And likewise, that's for the scholars. And I can give you the levels of scholars, but I need you to just get the point, because we got to build this up. The other thing was common people. Not all laymen are the same. Some common people, they don't know their alphabet. Some common people, they just know how to pray. Some common people have finished total books of fiqh, books in Aqidah, books in Tasawwuf, books in Hadith, tafsirs of the Quran, but they're still not scholars. They're common people. They're just at a higher level of being a common person. So what should we deduce from that, which is clear? That scholarship has conditions. And depending what you mean by a scholar, then you'll talk about the conditions related to that. So when I think of scholar, I think of it in a traditional sense. One who is specialized in the field of study, right? Who has studied the books, the reliable books in that field, who is aware of the writings and the statements and the understanding of the top scholars in that field, and who has spent a significant amount of time studying in that field with the specialists of that field. To me, that's a scholar. And when I put that terminology there, the prerequisites, many of the people who claim the scholarship, and I don't know any sound mind person who's not a scholar who's going to claim he's a scholar, they don't fit. That doesn't put nobody down. It puts people in their place. I don't want nobody who doesn't have the skill set operating on my soul. I don't. Say I don't know. It's okay. Don't try to teach me something you don't know. Say I don't know. I remember my teacher told us in the beginning of our study, he said, the one who doesn't know how to say I don't know in its proper place will harm himself and the one who he gives that information to. The one who doesn't know how to say I don't know in its proper place will harm himself and the one who he is giving that information to. And think about this when you don't want to say I don't know in its proper place. You harm yourself because whoever gives judgments without knowledge will take their place in the hellfire, right? And you may think I'm just telling somebody something, right? I'm just telling some information. But if you're giving them wrong information, remember Islam is not a worldly science. Islam is a science of the hereafter. That means everything we learn, we're trying to escape the hellfire and enter Jannah. So our hereafter, everlasting life depends on what we learn in Islam. It's not just some secular science. If I get it wrong, it's okay. Maybe if I get it wrong, it could lead me to disbelief and could lead me in the hellfire. It's serious. This is a religion, right? It's very serious. So we have to be able to say, I don't know. Why? Because if the person believes you and trusts you, they may not ask nobody else. If they trust you, they think you're knowledgeable, they ain't gonna ask, they may not ask nobody else. And you gave them a wrong answer and you knew you didn't know because you didn't learn. Now that person is practicing their Islam improperly because you was too prideful to say, I don't know. Because someone told you, all you got to do is read Quran and Hadith and you can just go ahead and do your thing. You harm that person. That person is may not go seek from no one else, and they will be misguided because of you. And what could have saved you and them is just to say, I don't know in its proper place. Right? I don't know in its proper place. And let's make it a habit among us. We can't save the whole world. That's not going to happen. But we can try to save ourselves and those who we can influence. All of us get in the habit of saying, I don't know. I watch people who obviously don't know, challenging, I'm like, you ain't even making the words correctly. What you're trying to say is a mistake. And that's not to put you down. Just say, I don't know. It's fine. That's why I said come with an empty cup. Because we're going to get there. Many of us don't know, and we don't want to say, I don't know. If I look in my Atlantic city, in my city alone, one of the biggest problems is not sectarianism, different groups. No, it's not different groups. One of the biggest problems is people don't want to say, I don't know. We got imams. Let me, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I want to give you an example of this. There was a man, he shouldn't be an imam. And not because I think badly of him. He doesn't even know the basics of Islam. But he was in a place, they elected him. Or they used politics to put him in charge. I'm going to show you how bad this is. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And I told this person, you shouldn't be in that position, bro. You don't even know your obligatory basic knowledge of the religion. You should not be leading people. I mean, not saying you got to be a scholar to do that, but you're not even a basic layman. You don't even know what is obligatory upon you in the religion. And you're the imam? Come on, bro. You don't got to be perfect. You can have mistakes. I got that. But you don't even know the basics of the religion. Someone came to him and gave him a question. Listen to the question and listen to his answer. And I'm not putting him down. Like I said, we all should be in our place. Someone asked him, there are 5 prayers. Why is Fajr, Maghrib, and Isha, the rakats, the first 2 rakat are out loud. And in Maghrib, the 3rd rakat and the 4th rakat are silent. You know what he said? He said because the first 2 rakats is fard, and the other 2 rakats is sunnah. That was the answer he gave. Listen to what I said. He said the first 2 rakats of Maghrib, they're loud, and the last one is silent because the first 2 rakats are fard, obligatory, and the last rakat is sunnah. And Isha, 2 rakats are loud because the first 2 rakats are fard, and the last 2 rakats are sunnah. And he's the imam still to this day. And people go pray behind him. And he knows he don't know. Add to that. It's not like he don't know he don't know. He knows I don't know. Let me give you in the Shafi'i school. Just in the Shafi'i. I'm not going to speak about other schools. Those who know the rules of the other madhahib can speak on that. In the Shafi'i school, if you deem a fard obligation as sunnah, your prayer is invalid. Did you hear what I just said? If you deem something in the prayer that is a rukn, that is fard, that is obligatory, you deem it sunnah, your prayer is invalid. So what relates to that? Everyone who prayed Maghrib or Isha behind that Imam, so-called Imam, their prayers are invalid and they need to make them up. That's serious. How many years people been praying behind this person who knows they don't know and won't sit down and learn just to be a leader? And I'm not speaking bad opinion. I know the person. That is bad. It just ruined everyone's prayers. All because I don't want to say I don't know. And there are people in that community that are way more knowledgeable than him. And wouldn't make that mistake. So I'm just giving an example. That's by way of example, right? How dangerous that is. Now, what if people die praying behind that person? Weddings, nikah, marriage, giving marriage and don't know the rules of marriage, and marrying people. People think they're married and the marriage contract is invalid. It was not done properly. The conditions were met. The integrals were not fulfilled. And they're sleeping together and having children. Their marriage is fornication. Their children are bastards, Islamically, because this one don't know how to say I don't know. I'm just giving you an example. That's by way of example. You could go on and on and on to show us the importance of having qualifications and some degree of knowledge. Everybody's not going to be Imam Shafi'i or Abu Hanifa or Malik or even far less than them. But everyone has to learn a certain portion of the knowledge. And guess what? Let me show you how dangerous this Wahhabism stuff is. Because it's our problem. And it hurts the black community the most. It's our problem, a very big problem. And I'm not afraid to say it because we're getting slaughtered by that. If we're going to stand up for white supremacy and fight it because it's injustice, it's oppression, I can't think of no oppression worse than oppression and cheating in the religion. Because we've been victims. Many of us on this chart have been in the Nation of Islam, Moore Science Temple, Ansars, 5%ers, all these different black movements that we came through that we thought was Islam and we were totally mistaken. And now today, they come with another modern day Wahhabism, which they call Salafiyah, and many of our black people are stuck and drowning in that stuff. And we're so burnt out with going through group and being confused that we just start surrendering. All right, it don't matter. No, this is a problem. And these are our children. We're losing generations of people while the world is building institutions around us. This is serious. It ain't a joke. You go around the Islamic world, people are building universities and institutions, and their children are scholars at 15, 16, 20 years old. And our people, we are still struggling because we're drowning in a wrong concept of Islam. We have no structure, no real development to face the international stage that we're going to face. And then we wonder why somebody come over here and always want to be the leader, because we don't know nothing. That's why they don't respect you, because you don't know anything. And they know it. And the problem is, we won't identify that and fix it. We'll just go on the black card. Well, my people know, we can know something. Yeah, we should learn. And then we should be great scholars. That's true. Let me tell you a story. One of the famous universities in the world, it's been over 1,000 years, is Al-Azhar University in Egypt. Right there. Al-Azhar University in Egypt. Al-Azhar University in Egypt is in Cairo, Egypt. It is, put that up, Al-Azhar It is in Cairo, Egypt. It is one of the oldest Islamic universities in the world, the most famous Islamic university in the world. It is an Ahl Sunnah university. It is a Sunni university. I'm getting ready to shatter some stuff because at the end of the day, people are not going to keep deceiving black people if I'm around, nah, you're going to come correct. If I have any say in it, you will not deceive black people no more in Islam. Not while I'm around. Hopefully, we can build some people who will have that position. So, and you're not going to be coming and deceive us. That's not going to happen. Not happening. Period. All right. Azhar University, I'm giving you us, black people, how we were when we were in Africa. One of the great scholars of Azhar, he went to Timbuktu. You know, Timbuktu was a great university in Africa. Black university, Africans, with a chain of narration, with sciences of all kinds. He went and he said this. He said that I traveled to this place in Africa, Timbuktu, this famous university, and I was Azhari, and I was at the top sheikhs of Azhar. He said, when I went there, I was like, excuse me, I'm going to teach these unlearned Africans, the blacks. He said this, and this is written in his works. He said, this is among these early stories of the Azhari scholars. He said, his attitude he was talking about, I'm going to educate these blacks in Islam. And he wasn't in a way, he wanted to give da'wah. But his mindset was that these black people, they really didn't know religion. They didn't know Islam. When he got to Timbuktu, he met the scholars of Timbuktu. He met the scholars of Timbuktu, African, black scholars. He said, when I sat in their sessions, I wasn't even a student in their sessions. You heard that? He was a sheikh in Azhar. When he went to Timbuktu and sat with those scholars, he said, I was not qualified to be a student in their lessons. I went back to Azhar and studied more years just to come sit with the scholars of Timbuktu. Allahu Akbar. Did you hear that? He said that they were at such a level. He was a scholar from the most famous university in the world. When he came to Timbuktu, which was in the middle of nowhere in those days, African scholarship, Islamic scholars, they had generations and chains of narration. He said, when I sat with their scholars, I wasn't qualified to be a student in that class. I had to go back to Azhar and learn to come back and sit with them. Allahu Akbar. You see the level of how our people used to be? We need a same thing in America among African Americans. Not default, just give it to me. No, we earned it. When you come to our place, you can't come weak. We know our stuff. We know our scholars. We know our chains of narration. We know our books. We know the Islamic science. You can't come in here wailing, as we say. You can't come in here just saying anything. Nah, that ain't going to work. You're not going to tell us Yaqub's grafted devil. We know better. No way. You're not coming to us telling us Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab was a great scholar, Sheikh al-Islam, and all the Muslims for 1,000 years before him were misguided mushriks who worship graves. That's for an idiot. That's not for someone who has knowledge. That's not going to happen. We know better. And we're going to teach our children better. We have to raise the bar. But when I ask that question, a simple question, we mentioned scholars. And our Imam mentioned 2 scholars from Syria. But because these are my teachers and the teachers of my teachers, so I know about them. You can't use them as examples because I know them. I know their methodology. I know in fiqh. I know in aqidah. I know in tasawwuf. You cannot use them. And And then when you mention Suyuti and Nawawi, I know those scholars as well. I know their books. Can I use them? Why? Not because we want to show off. We got to learn our religion properly so no one can put a wool over our eyes. And so ultimately, we can be winners on the day of judgment. This is important. So my advice in closing, because this is a for us, this topic and what the details of it is probably a 6-month course for us, because it's going to take us a long time just to get it, because we're so default Wahhabism in us, in our society. It takes a long time to get off that stuff, because we are suffering from stress, from so much misguidance being given to us, and then we got to start over and start over. That is depressing, and I understand. That's why we cling on to nonsense, because I got to have something. Give it all that stuff. Let's start learning seriously from the beginning, come with an empty cup, and let's build up, right? And I'm giving you the tools. And by the way, I want to question, because if there's some people who are always defending Wahhabi and Salafi ideas, I mentioned to you the statement of Abdullah ibn Mubarak, al-isnadu min ad-din, walau la isnad laqala man sha ma sha. The chain of narration is part of the religion. And if it's not for the chain of narration, then anyone can say about the religion whatever they want. Did any of you, since you're researchers and since you study, and I know some of you, and I don't know which one of you did any of you bring me a chain of Salafis and Wahhabis back to the Prophet yet? I didn't hear that chain yet. I want a chain from us all the way back to the Prophet, back to the Salaf. Don't even go back to the Prophet. Go back to the Salaf alone. That's the 3rd century Hijrah. And show me where all the scholars were Salafi, Wahhabi, no madhab, no Sufis. Did anyone produce that chain yet? Don't pass that over. Don't gloss that fact over. Did anyone produce a chain yet? Did you get that chain? Did you Google that chain yet? All of us like Google. Google it. Some of us are fast Googlers. Google me a chain of non-Sufis, non-Ash'aris back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Non-madhab followers. No Shafi, no Hanafi, no Maliki. Give me one chain. Did anyone Google that yet? Stop fast Googlers. Come on, I know you can find it. That's a little sarcasm, but no, seriously. Did anyone do it? I don't hear anything. All of you defending. Did anyone do it? Where's the chains? Nothing. I want to explain something. That's the homework assignment. That's the homework assignment. I want a chain from us back to the Salaf, since we all Salafi. That's the claim. And I say Wahhabi. I don't even use the word Salafi. I think y'all getting used to that, because that's what they were always originally called, and they changed the name to pull the wool over our eyes. You ain't pulling the wool over my eyes. Wahhabi. That's what it is. So my point is, since you have such a valid doctrine, bring me the chain. Go ask your big sheikhs, all of those students of knowledge, all of those who got master's degrees in hadith and PhDs from Medina University. Bring me one chain. One chain. One. And you said that you are people of hadith. In hadith knowledge, if you want to have an authentic narration, a sahih narration, you must have an unbroken chain. That is the first condition that the scholars of hadith mention for the acceptability and the authenticity of a narration. You must have an authentic chain. Where is your chain of all Salafi Wahhabis? Bring it. Crickets. I don't hear nothing. And listen, since you don't have it, then that means you're not following the methodology of the Salaf, because the Salaf, they required a chain of narration for their information. They didn't accept that a person just come and say, I'm following such and such. The Prophet said such and such. Where is your chain? Name for me your men and women who narrate. Where are they? Give them to me. I know. So you know what that means when you don't have a chain? Oh, people of Hadith, Ahlul Hadith, people of Hadith in our time, you know what that means? That means your claim is da'if, weak, or maybe mawdu', false, fabricated. That's what that means. If you can't produce your chain, that means your claim is false, weak. We don't take it. We don't accept it. Y'all always say that hadith is da'if. That hadith is da'if. We don't accept that. Your whole doctrine is da'if. We don't accept it. Now, a lot of us are in compromise mode. I'm not one of them. I'm not compromising my religion for nobody. If you have a valid claim, bring it. If you have a valid claim, bring it. Don't tell me you're connected to Ahl Sunnah in one breath because you need a connection. So you're connected to Ash'aris and Sufis and Shafis and Malikis and Hanafis. But then when you want to state your claim, all of them were misguided. And according to you, you don't take from the people of Bid'ah. So if all of the chains of narration are full of people of Bid'ah and Sufis, then where do you take your religion from? Come on, man. Stop playing games. Black people, if we're smart, we're intelligent, stop letting people run game on us that is stupid. Doesn't even make sense. Once we know, when we don't know, it's obvious. You don't know, so somebody can do anything with you. But when you learn, it's available. This is the beauty of Islam. People can't play with our deen. They're only going to play with people who don't know. When we know our religion, some things just don't make sense. And among them is that you have an unbroken chain talking about you're the correct way to follow Islam. That's one way to know, for sure. And we don't have to have a long debate with this. The books are available. The scholars are available. And trust me, you know why I say that with confidence? You know why I say you won't have a chain with confidence? I can say that with confidence. I don't doubt. I don't look like I'm hesitating, do I? Do I look like I'm saying, oh, maybe somebody might? You can't find it. You won't find it. It doesn't exist. And if you make up one, and I hope no one is that crazy, you make up a chain, I'm going to catch you. I'm going to expose you. Because Ahl Sunnah is protected. We preserve our scholars, specialists in the field of hadith. They preserve the false narrations as well as the authentic narrations. So when you produce your false claim, you're going to be shown to be a liar. And I want you to say your real claim when you've not been able to produce it. The real claim is all the Muslims were misguided until the time of this Wahhabi movement, and they revived Islam, and now we got to follow them. That's why they only name a handful of scholars, because no one else was on that stuff. That's why they only can say this one and this one and this one. These are the scholars. These are not even students among scholars. They're not even students among scholars. And anyone, and here's what I don't want you to do, and I won't do it. Some of these things, they're not arguments. We argue things that can have a difference of opinion. We discuss them and we go back and forth. When something is fact, there's no argument. There's truth and falsehood. There's yes or no. There's not an argument in that. So we need to build on something. First of all, there's not an argument. You don't have a chain from yourself back to the Salaf that is unbroken from scholar to scholar that doesn't contain an Ash'ari, a Maturidi, a Sufi, an Ash'ar, a Hanafi, a Maliki, a Shafi, or Hanbali. That don't exist. Not in the history of Islam has that ever exist. So therefore, that claim you got that we don't follow Madhahib, that's some strange claim that the Ummah of Muhammad never accepted. So this idea I don't have to follow a madhab, and you're not even at the level of the scholars in the chain, because we're talking two things. We're talking the chain, and then we're talking about the people in the chain, because we're going to go to that level. So don't just think we're going to mention names. No. We're going to mention names, and then we're going to mention who those people were, what was their status and knowledge, who were their students, who were their teachers, and we're going to go every generation back to the seller. So it's not going to be no easy fake name calling and name dropping. No, you got to know your scholars. So we want that. So who did they learn from? From whom did they take from? Who were their teachers? Who were the students of the? And guess what? In Islam, all this stuff is preserved. So that's what people don't realize. All this in our religion is preserved. So you can't make it up. You're going to get caught. So I warn you, don't embarrass yourself by making it up. Because you're going to get caught. Because we're going to go from every level of the chain. When I talk about myself, I learned from my teacher. I can tell you who my teacher were, who were his students, who were his teachers, who were their teachers, who were their students, who were the teachers of those teachers, who were their students, who were the teachers. All that we know, all the way back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's our religion. That's the deen. That's what people who are specialists in this field, that's what they do for a living. So I know you can't make it up. No, you can't make it up. And by the way, my teachers were hadith scholars. So they weren't just scholars of fiqh or Sufis or Ash'ari. They were hadith scholars. This is their field. This is what they do. They have chains of narration from the greatest hadith scholars in the world. This is what they do. This is their field. They are the head specialists in this field. That's what they do. So I'm passionate because I'm really talking to my people, because it's like the bully. You know the bully? And I'm going to close with this. I said I was going to close, but if you know me, I got like 4 closings. I got lastly, finally, this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I might get to finishing. You know the bully? The bully goes and beats everybody up in the neighborhood. And most people are scared of the bully. So someone stands up to the bully and whoop him. And you realize the bully was a coward the whole time. The bully was a coward the whole time. Didn't even have the ability to really fight. That's what happens to us in Islam. We as black people have been bullied by people who can't even fight. We've been bullied with Islam. And it has ruined us. It has ruined our future generations, and we're in trouble. And we're going to be fighting this for the next 50 years, maybe 100. That's how much damage was done. If you don't have 100 Imam Amins speaking out, talking straight talk, it's going to be worse. So, and believe me, we got people who are way more knowledgeable than me. I'm talking about Sunni, Ahlul Sunnah. But they're not speaking out. So I must keep speaking till they open their mouth. And they're privately, let me share with you, they're privately contacting me. Oh, alhamdulillah, Sheikh, I'm so proud of the work you're doing. Keep it up, standing for Ahlul Sunnah. And my questions, and I won't name them, they know who they are. I need your help. I need you on the battlefield, not in the Pentagon. I need you on the battlefield. Stop saving your reputation and your paycheck and your position. I need you on the battlefield. I won't name you. I won't call you out. But you got the message because you're listening. I need you to stop compromising your religious position for your status. I need you on the battlefield. We got souls to save. We got generations of black children that are suffering from this stuff. And it'll go on for generations, and you have the knowledge, you have the skill set, you have the know-how to help change it, and you have the obligation to do it. You have the obligation. I got Seriously. Caucasian sheikhs, Americans, Sunnis, calling me saying, Imam, I want to help, but I'm a white boy. And this black stuff going on, I'm afraid to talk. Seriously. You heard what I said? I got white, American, Sunni, knowledgeable teachers. They call me on the phone. I want to help Imam, but this situation, I'm white. And if I come talking authoritative, it's going to backfire. You hear that? So you brothers, African Americans, blacks, who got the same level of knowledge, we got to get on the field. We got to do the struggle. Stop trying to gloss it over. It's not going to go away. Just because you ain't talking about it doesn't mean it's going to go away. I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about something else. Yeah, it ain't going away. You sick. You got diabetes. You keep eating sugar, acting like you ain't sick, you're going to die. They're going to cut your feet off. That's real. You got to deal with it. You got to stop eating sugar. You got to stop intaking all these carbs, and you got to work too. You got high blood pressure. You can't keep pouring the salt. We are in this situation. We can't keep settling for people misguiding our people. We got to stand up. We can't just keep being quiet. We can't. Our people are going to be lost generations if we keep being quiet. We got to speak up. We got to deal with this issue. And it ain't no hatred. It's all love. We just want to be on the right path. And someone, believe me, I know many who went through this stuff and they said, you know what? Dad, man, I spent a lot of time in this movement. Some of them are graduates from the University of Medina, Wahhabi Center, and they had to change. Some of them studied in those camps and they had to fix themselves. Alhamdulillah, that's the process. Don't stay stuck on stupid. If you realize you made a mistake, alhamdulillah, we're human beings. We made a mistake. I was wrong. Let me learn. But don't stay stuck with someone you know you can't defend, you can't stand on. Don't stay there. Move. And accept that this is a part of the path. Imam al-Ash'ari was a Mujtahid for 40 years. He was a sheikh of the Mujtahid before he had to admit that I made a mistake. I was wrong. We're human. It's going to happen. Just don't stay there. Inshallah, let me take a few questions. I'm sorry for going over my time, but this is important. It's very important. And if it was more people to do it better than me, I would be quiet. But you got guys who studied in the major centers of learning, and they come and they just fold in front of Wahhabis. Fold like a blanket or a towel or something. You studied in Azhar, you studied in Tarim, you studied in Darul Mustafa, you studied in the Ribat, you studied in the great schools of Morocco and Fez, and you're a coward. Get yourself together. You know better, and you settling for this stuff. Come on, man. With fake humbleness and fake, you know better. You studied at the feet of some of the greatest scholars this nation has produced. Al-Sunnah has produced with unbroken chains and quiet as a church mouse. Come on, man. Be serious. And they know me. I don't hold my tongue with this stuff. Because it's sad. You went all the way overseas to be a coward? That's what you went to study for? To not tell the truth? To get over there and compromise your religious principles? That's what you did? You should have stayed home if that's what you're going to do with it. You didn't help us. In fact, you made it worse. Because they can point to you as, see, that's what he do. That's what he did. I'm trying to save the ummah by letting this guidance spread. I'm sorry, that's a rant. Let me take a few questions real quick. Hello, I am tired. We got work to do. And we need all soldiers on deck. We got a lot of work to do. Do we got any questions? that we can not until you learn what is fard ayn as a Muslim first. So, in your opinion, do you consider learning Muslim-Christian polemics a fard ayn for Western Muslims? For those who learn what is Islam first, you know Islam, you know what Islamic belief is correctly, the fard part of Islamic belief, and then some people, as a fard kifaya, must, as a communal obligation, must deal with these issues. But as for every individual, you only need to learn enough to remove doubt from your heart. That's it. It is possible, but not now because we got corona issues, and I'm very concerned about the health of our people. So I have, to be concerned about that. Inshallah, when these things clear up, but you don't got to just move to Atlantic City. There's other places too, but you are welcome. But there are other places, I'll provide some that you could go study, and you have teachers just as me. They may not be the same as me, but they're good teachers, and they may be better in knowledge than me that you could go sit with. I'm not calling to myself. I'm the worst of the worst. In Islam, praying behind a person, he is a Wahhabi, but you don't know, will your prayer be valid? In Islam, we do everything by what is apparent. We don't go giving inquisition to people's beliefs. Obviously, you praying, you're a Muslim. Until I learn different and you invalidated the rules of prayer, then I have to say my prayer is invalid. But if the outward looks the same, your prayer is valid. That's the rule. Are you giving the football this Friday at Masjid Muhammad? I want to come through and see you to have a few gifts from my Imam. For security reasons, I cannot tell you my whereabouts. Oh, that's funny. No, inshallah, I may do. Inshallah. My intention is to. Alhamdulillah. How important is it to take tafsir from a scholar of your same madhab? Tafsir has nothing to do with a madhab. Unless you're reading books like you are a Maliki. Yeah, I'm putting you on Front Street. You are a Maliki. So there are books of tafsir that were written by Maliki scholars and address a lot of fiqh issues, like tafsir al-Qurtubi, for instance, because he was a Maliki. You'll find a lot of discussion in the Ayat al-Ahkam versus rulings that are from the perspective of the Maliki madhab and other Maliki scholars who wrote tafsir. But in general, tafsir is not necessary to be related to a madhab, a school of jurisprudence. So those scholars, so you have scholars from every madhab who wrote books of tafsir, and they didn't necessarily write it about the madhab. But some tafsirs are related to madhahib, and they have issues related to the madhahib by those scholars. But tafsir is a separate science from fiqh. It's not the same science. Uh, do you see it possible that the so-called learned Wahhabis will ever sit and discuss Aqidah with the learned of Ahl Sunnah? It can happen, but we got to make a platform for that. And to be honest, I have to be honest, even if it's against yourself. It is very difficult for your opponent or a person who wants to talk with you if they feel they're going to be attacked. And sometimes out of the enthusiasm and the passion, you may state things in a way that seems like an attack, even though it's not. And it may be perceived for that. So sometimes you got to have an agreement before such a discussion. And I've talked to learned Wahhabi people privately. They didn't talk publicly. And we had some good conversations. And, but when it's, when it's contentious, probably not. But if we just had a regular dialogue, no one's trying to harm, no one's trying to embarrass nobody, we're just talking facts, maybe that's possible. But if it's not like that, it probably is not going to happen. So you got to find the people got to be like that. And I'm not saying I'm the best one to sit in such a session. And maybe I am. I mean, you know, I'm trying to get there, but maybe some other people are better at that. Maybe. Allahu A'lam. That the question of witr, let's come back to that because I got warned about going. I'll answer that question. Send it to me in a private chat, inshallah. Because they wanted me to stick to the subject matter. The book in Aqidah we put up, I recommend 3 books that we talked about. We post them. Al-Aqidah Tahawiyah as a general overview, Jawharat al-Tawheed in Ash'ari Aqidah, and Al-Aqidah al-Nasafiyah in the Maturidi school. These are the 3 books that I would suggest all of you start with, even at a beginner and the intermediate level. I'll take 2 or 3 more questions, then we need to stop. Hadith has nothing to do with a madhab as well. So, though there are hadith in relating to rulings that are mentioned in each madhab, but as for hadith, it's a separate science from fiqh. So, you got to separate sciences. Fiqh and hadith are 2 different things. So, the science of hadith has its own scholars. So, some of those scholars are Shafi, Maliki, Hanafi, Hanbali. That's a whole separate field. It is not. Fiqh and hadith are 2 separate sciences, and they have 2 different objectives and different books and different scholars. So following the madhab is in fiqh when we're talking about fiqh, or in aqidah when we're talking about aqidah. Don't transfer that to a science it don't apply to. Science of hadith has nothing to do with the madhab of fiqh. It's scholars of hadith. Tomorrow morning, we have a special episode of the Black Imams Roundtable with 2 of our young, learned African-American sisters, Sister Fatima Knight and her sister Noureddin Knight. They will be with joining us tomorrow at 11 o'clock to discuss various issues in the Black Muslim community from the Black Muslim women perspective. So the conversation will be really led by them. I will just be there moderating, but they're going to be actually giving what they think is the best thing that they want to get across and talk about. And then tomorrow is a busy day for us. Tomorrow night, so that's tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow night, there is a night edition of the Black Imams Roundtable, which is going to talk about gender equality in Islam and Black Lives Matter and all of that thing. That is going to be at 9 o'clock at night with 2 distinguished African-American learned teachers and Sheikh and Sheikha, Imam and Ustadha, Imam Dawood Walid from the Detroit area, from the D, as they say, and Sheikha Aisha Pram. They will be discussing, this is going to be a hot topic because they were both on fire to talk about this. So that's tomorrow night. Imam Dawood Walid and Sheikha Aisha Pram. And that's going to be, so tomorrow is going to be a busy day with the Black Imams Roundtable. I hope to see all of y'all tomorrow. And we still got our class at 7 o'clock. So tomorrow is going to be a busy day. Please, please, please. Lastly, this is my lastly, I promise. Don't take none of this stuff personally. Write down, fact check, review. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm trying to make sure you don't get led astray. So to the best of my ability, I'm here for you. I'm your brother. Even if you don't disagree with me, I'm not going to hate you. And even if you disagree, I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to attack you. We can disagree and we can talk till we find an agreement. I can agree to disagree. That doesn't mean I'm going to be quiet about it. I'm going to disagree, we disagree. And I'm going to keep fighting until we agree. Inshallah. So may Allah help us all. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.